freedom find from my heart where the light keeps shining, and I choose to feel the whole world crying for the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose love.
Hi, everybody. This is Barbara Threecrow live with Unraveling the Mystery. It's July 5th, 2017. I'm talking to you from Turtle Island here in the Catskills, about 100 miles north from the tip of Turtle Island, Manhattan, along the great river, the Mahikanituk. That was called by the people living here, my people and others, First Nations people, meaning the river that flows both ways. You know, once upon a time, that river held the dolphins and whales and all kinds of, water people, the water nations, and many, many years it has been really severely polluted by GE, one of your well-known, necessary, whatever we need from GE, I don't know. But anyway, I'm just here, and it's a beautiful day on the land here. And I've been reading to you from the book Anastasia, and this is the second book, and this is The Ringing Cedars of Russia. I hope you've been with me all along, so you kind of have an idea of what's going on here. But Anastasia is a mysterious young woman. The author met her, who first he was thinking maybe she's a witch or just insane. But she is kind of a mystery. She has some very interesting teachings, of course, that she's helping this young man with. And this is chapter 8 of the second book, The Ringing Cedars of Russia. And it's called, the title is The Answer. So, and somebody's mic is hot. Somebody's mic is hot. This is the answer. I can hear beyond the pall. Once we found ourselves alone, I asked Anastasia, what's all the big excitement about some kind of eagle? The eagle will be very much needed for the little one, she answered, for our baby, Vladimir. To play with? Yes, only play has a considerable significance for his future learning and feelings. I see. I said this even though I didn't fully understand this business of playing with a bird, even an eagle. But what were you doing with the cedar? Were you praying or talking with someone? And what happened with you and the cedar? And why did great-grandfather seem so severe when he talked with you? Tell me, Vladimir, do you think there is, some kind of intelligence out there? Does there exist a mind in the invisible world of the cosmic, in the universe? What do you think? I think it's true. You know, even scholars talk about that, as do mediums and the Bible. And this something, what would you say is the best word to describe it? I need to know this so that you and I can agree upon a definition. Say, for example, mind, an intelligence, a being, forces of light, a vacuum, maybe rhythm, a spirit, an absolute, or even God. Well, let's say God. All right, then. Now tell me, does God attempt to communicate with humans? What do you think? I do not mean by a voice from heaven, but through people, through the Bible, let us say, or to offer a hint on how to be more happy. But the Bible was not necessarily dictated by God. Well, by whom, then, would you say? Well, people could have done that. People who wanted to invent religion. They sat down and wrote it collectively. You think it is that simple? People just sat down and wrote a book. and thought up narratives and laws, a book that has lasted for millennia and is the most popular and widely read book that has existed to date. Over the centuries, a whole multitude of other books have been written, but few of them can compare with the Bible. What does that mean to you? I don't know, I admitted. Ancient books, of course, have been around for a long time, but most people today prefer contemporary literature, novels, detective stories, and all sorts of inferior stuff. And why is that so? Because reading them hardly requires any thinking. In reading the Bible, one is obliged to think at a faster pace, and there are many questions one must answer for oneself. Only then will it become clear. It unfolds itself, so to speak, to one's consciousness. If one looks upon the Bible merely as a statement of dogma, then reading and memorizing a few commandments is sufficient. But any dogma imposed from without and not grasped by one's inner being precludes taking advantage of the opportunities afforded humans as creator. What questions do we need to answer when we read the Bible? Well, to begin with, replied Anastasia, you might try to figure out why Pharaoh was unwilling to allow the children of Israel to leave Egypt. Well, what's there to think about? The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. Why? Who would want to let his slaves go anyway? And they worked hard and brought Pharaoh a good income. The Bible says that more than once the Israelites brought a plague over the whole land of Egypt. They even killed people's firstborn offspring, along with those of animals. Sorcerers were later burnt at the stake for such acts, but here Pharaoh simply refused to let them go. Now answer the question, where did the Israelite slaves get enough goods and cattle to spend 40 years traveling? Where did they get the weapons to seize and destroy cities along their route? Well, what do you mean, where? Didn't God give them everything? Do you think that was only God's doing? Well, then who? Human, Vladimir, has full freedom. He has the opportunity to make use of all the bright resources God gave him originally, but he can make use of other resources too. Many represents a union of opposites. I mean, humans represents a union of opposites. See, Vladimir, how the sun shines? That is God's creation. It is for everyone, for you and me, for the snakes and the grasses and the flowers. But bees use the flowers to get honey, while the spider's power is to draw poison, and each of them has its own function. No bee and no spider can do otherwise. Only human has a wider scope. Only man can act in more than one way. One man can rejoice at the first rays of the sun, while another might curse. Humans, you see, can be both a bee and a spider. Does that mean God wasn't the only one helping the Israelites? How can you tell, then, what God actually did, as opposed to what was merely attributed to him? When something significant is created through man, Anastasia explained, there are always two opposites at work. Man exercises freedom of choice. Which he will accept more of depends upon his purity and his conscious awareness. Well, all right, let's accept that. So you were attempting to talk with him when you were standing at the base of the cedar? Yes, I wanted him to answer me. And great-grandfather objected? Well, great-grandfather thought that I was speaking too irreverently, that I was too demanding. You really were demanding, I saw it. You were stamping your feet, you were pleading. What on earth did you want? I wanted to hear an answer. Well, what sort of answer? You see, Vladimir, God's essence is not in the flesh. He cannot yell down to everyone from heaven telling them how to live. But he wants things to be fine and whole with everyone, and so he sends his sons, people into whose mind and soul he has been able to break through, at least to some extent. His sons then go and talk with other people. They speak different languages, sometimes through words, sometimes with the help of music or even pictures or various actions. Sometimes they are listened to, at other times they are persecuted and, yes, killed, like Jesus Christ, for example. And still God is sending forth his sons. But as always, it is only some of the people who pause and will listen to them, while others who are called do not get the message at all, and they violate the laws of a happy existence. I see, and that's why God will punish humankind by a global catastrophe, some kind of fearful judgment. God never punishes anyone, and he does not need catastrophes. God is love. But that is the way it was planned from the very beginning, created that way from above. When mankind reaches a specific point, one might say in its unwillingness to accept the essence of truth. Once the elements of darkness manifest in man reach that critical point, in order to avert total annihilation, a global catastrophe rushes in which takes away a great many people's lives and crushes the destructive life support system of artificial creation. The catastrophe serves as a lesson to those who are left alive. Following a catastrophe, there is a window of time in which humankind seems to go through a fearful hell, but it is a hell of their own making. It is those who are left alive that fall into this hell, and then for a while their children survive in a pristine original state, and they eventually reach a stage one could call paradise, and then they fall away again, and it all starts all over again in tears. This has been going on for billions of earthly years. If all this has been inevitably repeating itself for billions of years, well, what then were you asking for? I wanted to find out how and by what means people could be made wiser without subjecting them to a catastrophe. You see, I have figured out that a catastrophe can be blamed not only on those who do not accept truth, but also on the absence of a sufficiently effective means of making the truth be seen, of making people alert to the truth. And I was asking him to find such a means, to reveal it either to me or someone to whom I feel is not really important. What is important is that it is there to be seen and that it works. And what did he tell you? What kind of voice does he have? No one can tell what kind of voice he has. His answer takes form, as it were, in man's discovery of a thought spontaneously occurring to himself. After all, he can speak only through his particle that is present in every human, and this particle is already relaying information to every other part of the individual with the help of the rhythm of vibration. Hence the impression arises that man is doing it all by himself, though man himself can actually do a great deal. After all, man is God's likeness. To each human there is a tiny particle breathed into him by God right at birth. He has given half of himself to humankind upon this earth, and the forces of darkness try, by whatever means they can, to prevent this God-reflected particle from acting out its high purpose, and to distract humans from communication with it and through it with God. It is much easier to fight with a small particle when it is all alone, especially if it is not connected to the basic force of the universe. But if these particles unite amongst themselves in bright aspirations, it is much more difficult for the forces of darkness to hinder them. Even if one single particle, living in just one single man, is in full contact with God, then it is impossible for the forces of darkness to overpower him, to defeat his spirit and his mind. Well, that means, I surmised, you appeal to him so that the answer would be given birth in you as to what to say to people and how to say it in order to avert a global catastrophe? More or less. And what answer was given birth in you? What words must be spoken? Words, just words alone, pronounced in the usual way, are not sufficient. So many words have been spoken already, yet humanity on the whole continues to move toward its own perdition. You have no doubt heard words to the effect that smoking is bad, that alcoholic drinks are bad, and this is repeated by a number of sources, including your own physicians, in the language that you best understand, yet you still go on doing it. You go on doing it without regard for the deterioration in your own health, and even painful sensations will not restrain you or many other people from these destructive habits. And God says to you, you should not do that. And the message reaches you through pain, and it is not just your pain, but his too. And yet you take painkillers galore and go on doing your own thing as before. Again, you are not interested in thinking about what produces the pain. And all the other high truths are known to mankind, but they are not being acted upon. Time after time they are rejected in favor of momentary, illusory gratifications. It means another way must be revealed to allow them not only to know, but also to feel other kinds of pleasure. Once man has learnt of these, he can compare and realize everything for himself. He will unblock access to the God-bestowed particle within himself. It is no good simply threatening man with a catastrophe. It is no good simply blaming those who do not accept truth, those who do not listen. Everyone who brings the truth to others must understand how needful it is to seek a more perfect method of explaining it. And great-grandfather did agree with me. But that's not what he said. There was a lot of that great-grandfather said that you did not hear. If you were able to communicate with each other without words, why then did you say the words, "I did hear"? Would you not consider it offensive if people conversed using foreign words you could not understand, giving that they knew your language too? Various thoughts ran through my mind. Either I believe everything she tells me or I don't. And she herself, of course, believes. And it's not just that she believes it. She acts upon it. She takes it all so intensely. Maybe I should try to somehow restrain her enthusiasm. So I tried to dampen her fervor by saying, "You know what I think, Anastasia? Maybe you don't need to take it so to heart and get so stirred up with your demands as you were doing at the cedar tree. Even the blue glow or vapor from the cedar came crushing down upon you. Your grandfather and great-grandfather were right to be concerned. It's probably quite dangerous. If God has not given the answer to any of his sons as to how to explain everything to people most effectively, that means there is no answer. It means that a global catastrophe is the most effective way of getting his message across. Maybe he's even annoyed with you for poking your nose in too far and will punish you so you won't do it again, just like your grandfather said. God is kind. He will not punish. But he isn't speaking to you either. Maybe he's not interested in listening to you, and meanwhile you're wasting so much energy. He is listening, and he is answering. Well, what is he answering? Is there something new in you now? He has hinted at where to find the answer, where to search for it. He's hinted to you? So where is it? In the union of opposites. Well, what does that mean? It happens, for example, when two opposite extremes of human thinking in the Avatamasa commentary merge into a new dynamic whole. This was behind the philosophies of Hunyuan and Qigong, which offer a world view of even greater perfection, not unlike the models and theories in your modern physics. What was all that? Oh, please do excuse me. I do not know what came over me. I completely forgot myself. Well, what are you apologizing for? You must forgive me. I used words which are completely unfamiliar to you. You're right. They are unfamiliar. I have no idea what they mean. I shall try not to do that again. Please, do not be angry with me. Don't worry, I'm not angry. Only explain in ordinary words where and how you will go about searching for this answer. So, what she was saying was the Avatamasa Sutra, which is also known as the Flower Garden Sutra, considered to be the most profound of the Buddhist sutras, which holds that all manifestations of existence are self-created and mutually identical. It gave rise to the philosophical school known as Huayin in Chinese and Qigong in Japan. So that explains what she was saying. And I'll continue now. I certainly cannot do it alone. It can only be known through the joint effort of the divine particles to be found in various people who live on the earth, people with opposite modes of thinking and also comprehension. Only through a joint effort will it be seen, and then in a dimension invisible to the eye, the domain of thoughts. One can also call it the dimension of the forces of light. It exists between the material world in which humans live and then God. I shall see it, and many others will too, and then it will be easier to attain a universal conscious awareness. It will be easier to bring mankind through the dark forces window of time, and the catastrophes will not be repeated. Specifically, what do people need to do right now to make the answer appear? It would be fine if a lot of people could wake up in the morning at a set time, let's say 6 o'clock, and think about something good. What specifically they think about is not important. It is important that they come out with bright thoughts. They can think about their children, about their loved ones, about how to make everyone happy. If they could only think 15 minutes like that. And the more people that do that, the quicker the answer will come. The Earth's time zones may be different since the Earth is turning, but the images created by these people's bright yearnings will merge into a single clear, fulfilled image of conscious awareness. The simultaneity of bright thoughts will intensify each person's ability many, many times. Oh, Anastasia, how naive you are. Who in their right mind would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning just to think for 15 minutes? People will only get up that early if they have to go to work, or have a plane to catch, or are going on a business trip. Anybody else will decide, leave the thinking to others, I'm going to get more sleep. I doubt you'll find many helpers that way. But you, Vladimir, could not you at least help me? Me? I don't wake up that early unless I have to. But if I should somehow find myself waking up then, what good things should I think about? Well, for example, you could think about the little son I will be giving birth to, your son. Think how delighted he will be to be kissed by the sun's rays, to see the pure and magnificent flowers all around him, and also have the bushy-tailed squirrel play with him in this glade. Think how good it would be if all the other children in the world could forever be kissed by the warm sun. Then nothing would make them sad. Then think about who you might say something glad to, or give a smile to during the day ahead. And how good it would be if this marvelous world lasted forever, and what you could do, you in particular, to bring this about. I'll think about our son, and I'll try to come out with other good thoughts, only what's the point? You'll be thinking here in the forest while I'll be in an apartment in the city. That's only two of us. You say many people are needed. So until we get a lot of people involved, isn't it pointless for just the two of us to try? Vladimir, even one person is more than none. Two together are more than two apart. Later, after you write your book, more people will come along. I shall feel them and delight in each one. We shall learn to catch each other's feelings of the heart and understand and help each other through the dimension of the forces of light. Something you say still has to be believed. I myself don't completely believe in this bright dimension, this domain of thoughts. You can't even prove it exists, because you can't touch it. Yet your scientists have come to the conclusion that thought is something tangible. They have, but since you still can't actually touch it, it's not something you can completely set in your mind. But when you write your book, people will be able to touch it. They can hold it in their hands like a materialized thought. Again, you're carrying on about that book. I've told you I don't believe in it either, even less in your claim that you, with the help of certain combinations of letters, known only to you, can arouse feelings in a reader, bright feelings yet, that will help the reader make some sense of it at all. I told you how it works. Yes, you told me, but it still doesn't make me believe. If I try to write, I shan't tell everything all at once, and people will laugh at me. You know something, Anastasia? Can I tell you in all honesty? Yes, tell me in all honesty. Only don't be offended, okay? I shall not be offended. Everything you've talked up to me, I'm going to have to verify with our scholars. I'm going to have to see what they say about it in various religions and also modern teachings. There's a lot of different courses out there now. There are a lot of preachers. Go ahead and verify by all means. And still, I feel you're a very kind person. Your philosophy is interesting and, yes, quite unusual. But if you compare your actions with those of others who are concerned about the soul, about ecology, well, frankly, you're way ahead of the rest. Well, why should you conclude that? Well, think about it. All the enlightened people, as you call them, have gone off by themselves at some point. Buddha went off for 7 years into the forest and set up a whole doctrinal platform, and he has a lot of followers throughout the world. Christ Jesus went off just for 40 days, and even now people are excited about his teachings. Christ Jesus went off by himself more than once, Anastasia pointed out, and he did a lot of thinking when he was traveling about. So let's say more than 40 days, let's say a year even. The elders who are now considered saints were ordinary people who went into the forest to live in isolation for a time, and then later monasteries were built on those sites and a lot of followers arose, right? Yes, Vladimir, you are right. And here you've been living 26 years now in the forest and you don't even have a single follower. You haven't come up with any platform. And here you're asking me to write a book. You're grasping at that like a straw. You dream of laying out your own combinations of signs in it. Well, if things aren't working out for you like with the other leaders, maybe it's not even worth trying. There are others more capable than you who may well think up something without your input. Come on, why not get real and live more simply? I'll help you adapt in our world. Now you're not offended, right? No, I'm not offended. Then I'll tell you the whole truth right to the end, to help you get hold of yourself. Go on. You have some extraordinary abilities, Anastasia. There's no doubt about that. You can pick up any information you want as easily as counting 1, 2, 3. But tell me now, when did you first become aware of that ray of yours? Well, it was given to me right at the start, as it is to everyone. Only my awareness of it and how to use it, that was something great-grandfather taught me by the time I was 6. So that means at 6 years of age you were already able to see what was going on in our lives? You could analyze situations and help people, and even treat illnesses at a distance? Yes, I could. Well, tell me, what have you been doing all the 20 years since? I have been telling you, and I have been showing you. I have been working with the people that you call Dachniks, trying to help them. All these 20 years, day in and day out? Yes, and sometimes even at night, if I was not too tired. So you've been acting like an obsessed fanatic, stubbornly holding on to the Dachniks all these years? Who made you do this? Nobody can make me. I did it of my own free will. After great-grandfather suggested it to me, I realized for myself what a good thing and how important it was. You know, I think your great-grandfather suggested the Dachniks to you because he felt sorry for you. After all, you grew up without your parents. He gave you the very easiest and simplest task. Now that he's seen you've begun to understand something greater, he's given you permission to work with other things and to drop the Dachniks. But this other is connected with the people you call Dachniks, and I shall continue to help them. I love them very much, and I shall never abandon them. Now, that's what I call fanaticism. There's something in you that you don't have enough to be a normal person. You must understand that. The Dachniks are far from being the most important people in our society. They have absolutely no influence at all over social development. Dakas and vegetable gardens, they're just small subsistence plots. It's where people go to relax after their hard work, or when they go to retire. And that's all. Do you understand? That's it. And if you, with all your colossal knowledge and phenomenal abilities, are only interested in Dachniks, you must have some kind of psychological disorder. I think I ought to take you to a psychotherapist. If you can get that disorder cured, then just maybe you'll be really in a position to help society. I very much want to help society. So then let's go. I'll take you to a practicing psychotherapist at a good private clinic. You yourself said a global catastrophe could happen. This way you'll be able to help ecological movements. You'll be able to help science. But I shall be an even greater help if I stay here. All right, you can come back here later and start getting involved in more serious issues. What do you mean, more serious? Well, you decide. Probably something connected, for example, with heading off an ecological disaster or a global catastrophe. And by the way, do you have any idea when the latter might occur? There are localized disasters happening even now in various parts of the earth. Mankind has been preparing everything and more for its own destruction for a very long time, Vladimir. But when will it happen on a global scale? When will the apocalypse come? Well, it might occur at any time, for example, but it can be prevented or delayed, as happened in 1992. You mean to say it might have come to pass in 1992? Yes, but they delayed it. Well, who are they? Who averted it? Who delayed it? A catastrophe on a global scale in 1992 was averted thanks to the Dachniks. What? There are all sorts of people all over the world who are working against global disaster. The 1992 catastrophe did not happen mainly thanks to the Russian Dachniks. And you, that means you, even at 6 years old, you were aware of the Dachnik's significance? You foresaw it? You worked non-stop and you helped them. Well, I understood the Dachnik's significance, Vladimir. And now I'm on to chapter 9, and this is about Dachnik Day and an all-earth holiday. You know, the Dachniks are those people who live out in the forest and have these little farms and little wood houses, and they farm and they have these wonderful gardens, of course, all natural. They call them Dachnik in Russia. So, Vladimir asks, but why Russian Dachniks in particular? What's the connection here? You see, Vladimir, even though the earth is very large, it is very, very sensitive. Think of how big you are by comparison with a tiny mosquito, and yet when a mosquito lands on you, you feel it through your skin. Well, the earth also feels everything. When people pave it over with concrete and asphalt, when they cut down trees, when they burn the forests growing, when they pick and poke at its innards and sprinkle it with powder called fertilizer, the earth feels this hurt, and yet still it loves people, as a mother loves her children. And the earth tries to absorb into its depths all of humanity's anger, and only when it is no longer has the strength to hold it back, that anger explodes in the form of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. The earth needs our help. Tenderness and a loving attitude give it strength. The earth may be large, but it is most sensitive, and it feels the tender caress of even a single human hand. Oh, how it feels and anticipates this touch. There was a time in Russia when the earth was deemed to belong to everyone, and therefore nobody in particular. So people did not think of it as their own. Then changes came in Russia. They began giving out tiny private plots to people to go with their dachas. It was no coincidence at all that these plots were extremely small, in other words, too small to cultivate with mechanized equipment. But Russians yearning for contact with the earth took to them with joyous enthusiasm. They went to people both poor and rich, because nothing can break man's connection with the earth. After obtaining these little plots of land, people intuitively felt their worth. Millions of pairs of human hands began touching the earth with love. With their hands, you understand, not with mechanized tools. Lots and lots of people touched the ground caressingly on those little plots, and the earth felt this. It felt it very much. It felt the blessing touch of each individual hand, and the earth found new strength to carry on. So what now? I queried. Should we erect a monument to every Dachnik as the savior of the planet? Yes, Vladimir, they are saviors indeed. But that would be far too many monuments. I have it. Why not set up a 1 or 2 day national holiday called Dachnik Day or an All-Earth Day? It could be designed or designated in the calendar. Oh, a holiday! Anastasia threw up her arms in elation. What a terrific idea, a celebration, a happy and cheerful holiday. That is something we definitely need. And you, with that ray of yours, can suggest to our government, to our deputies in the State Duma, that they pass this required legislation. I cannot get through to them. They are too busy with their daily routine. They have so many decisions to make, they have absolutely no time to think. Besides, there is not much point in my attempting to raise their conscious awareness. It would be difficult for them to accept a complete, conscious picture of reality. They are not allowed to make any better resolutions than those that they are passing at the moment. Well, who can stop the government or the president from so doing? You, the masses, the majority. As for connecting correct decisions, they are what you call unpopular measures. Yes, you are right. We have democracy. The most important decisions are taken by the majority. The majority is always right. The greatest conscious awareness is always achieved first by individuals, Vladimir. It always takes the majority a space of time to catch on. Well, if that's true, then why do we need democracy, referendums? They are needed to serve as a shock absorber, to avoid sudden jerks. When this shock absorber do not work, revolution occurs. A revolutionary period is always a challenge for the majority. But a Dachnik Day, that's not revolution. What's wrong with it? Well, a holiday like that is fine. It is needed, definitely needed. It should be set up as quickly as possible, I think. And I shall think about it. Can be done as quickly. How it will be done, I'll help you. I know better which levers to pull in our world for the most effective results. I'll write to the papers. No, better still, I'll write about the Dachniks in that book of yours and ask people to send telegrams to the government and the Duma requesting the establishment of a Dachnik Day as an all-earth holiday. Only what date? What date should it be? How about the 23rd of July? Why the 23rd? It is an appropriate day, also because it is your birthday, Vladimir. After all, this fantastic idea was yours. That's great. So we'll ask people to send telegrams asking for legislation setting up the 23rd of July as an all-earth holiday. And as soon as the telegrams start arriving at the Duma and people begin to wonder why people are sending them, you burst in with your ray. Burst in I shall. I shall burst in with all my might. And it will be fine, bright, and a beautiful holiday for everyone. Everyone will have such a good time, and the whole earth will rejoice in its light. Why does everyone have to have a good time? This holiday's only for Dachniks, isn't it? We must see that everyone has a good time. This holiday will indeed begin in Russia. But then it will become the most fantastic holiday for the world as a whole, a marvelous holiday for the soul. And how will it be celebrated the first time in Russia? I inquired. No one will know what to make of it. Each one's heart will suggest on that day what he should do and how to do it. I can visualize a general outline right now. And then Anastasia began talking, clearly enunciating each word. She talked with both speed and inspiration. It was all most extraordinary, the rhythm of her speech, the arrangement of her phrases, and the pronunciation of her words. And this is what Anastasia said. May all of Russia wake that day at dawn. May people alone or with friends and family come to the land and stand upon it with bare feet. Those who have their little plot of land, let them greet with praise the first rays of the sun amidst the shoots and seedlings they have planted, and touch each species with caressing hands. As the sun rises in the sky, let them pick and taste the fruit of their plantings, one from each variety, and that should suffice them until the midday meal. Before the meal, let them tend their plots anew. Let each one ponder their life and joy and what they are destined to do. Let each remember their family and their friends with love, and ponder why their planted seeds are growing, and designate the purpose of every plant. And even before the midday feast, everyone should spend at least an hour by themselves. It is not important how or where or exactly when, but they should be alone for a spell, to spend at least an hour in an effort to look within. Let the whole family gather for the meal in the middle of the day, and those living at home and those who have come from far away. Let dinner be prepared from what the earth has borne for the hour of repast, and let everyone bring to the whole table whatever is desired by their heart and soul. Let all the family members look each other lovingly in the eye, and let the eldest bless the table together with the youngest, and let the table all around with quiet conversation resound. There should be good words spoken about all those who sit beside you. This scene that Anastasia described was so extraordinarily vivid that I could feel myself sitting at the table with people all around. I found myself caught up in the celebration. I was believing in it, or rather I was participating, and I felt led to contribute a feature of my own. There should be a toast before dinner, I said. Everyone raise their glass, and let's drink to the earth. Let's drink to love. I actually felt I was holding the glass in my hand. And then suddenly she broke into my reverie. Vladimir, please let there be no alcoholic poison on the table. And the glass vanished immediately from my hand. Stop it, Anastasia, don't spoil the celebration. Well, since you have your mind set on it, let there be some wine from berries, but this must be imbibed in very small sips. All right, wine it is, then, just so as not to change our habits all at once, and after the dinner, then what shall we do? Let the people return to the cities and the towns, having gathered the fruit they have grown in their little plots of ground. Let them bear it in baskets and share it with everyone at home who do not have plots of their own. Oh, how many positive feelings will come from this day! They will bring about healings of many people's diseases, diseases which threaten with death, and those not erased by time will simply vanish. Let those who are incurably or even slightly ill go out to meet the flood of Dachniks returning from their plots of land. The rays of love and of good, along with the fruits of their labors, will heal diseases. Look and see. Look at the city's main railway station, where floods of people are arriving with baskets of flowers. Look, see the people's eyes, glimmering with kindness, with joy and peace. Anastasia was virtually glowing with a radiance as she became more and more inspired with the idea of this holiday. Her eyes were no longer merely shining with joy, they were literally sparkling with a pale blue luminescence. The expression on her face was changing, yet still remained joyful, as though a mighty flood of images of this celebration were rushing through her brain. All at once she fell silent, and then bending one leg at the knee and lifting up her right arm, she sprang from the ground with a tremendous recoil, virtually taking flight like an arrow shot from the earth. She leapt almost as high as the bottom branches of the cedars, and upon landing she waved her arm, clapped her hands, and a bluish glow flooded the glade. All the words Anastasia now uttered seemed to be echoed by each tiny bug and each blade of grass and each majestic cedar. Her voice sounded as though it were being reinforced by a hidden power, even though her words were not that loud. It seemed as though they could be heard by every vein running through the unfathomable expanse of the universe. Mother Russia will greet crowds of guests on that day. They are all of the earth, as Atlanteans born, as prodigal sons they shall return. On that day, all over Russia, let everyone awake and greet the dawn. Let all the strings of the harp of the universe make cheerful melody and swell with resonant sound. Let all the bards sing and tell with joyful tongue and play guitars in all the streets, in every yard around. And he who is too old will come once again be young as many, many years ago. And I, Anastasia, will I be young once more? Both you and I, Vladimir, shall be young, and people will feel young for the very first time. And the old shall write letters to their children, and children to their parents, and infants taking their very first step on earth shall enter a better world of joy. And on that day no child shall feel insulted, for adults shall trust children as their equals. And all the gods on high will to the earth descend, and will commend themselves to take on simple forms. And God himself, the universal God, will be delighted. May you rejoice too in love, making all of the earth so bright. Anastasia was really getting carried away with many images of this holiday. She was whirling around the glade in a fiery dance, becoming more and more inspired at every step. "Stop, stop," I cried to Anastasia, suddenly realizing that she was taking it all too seriously. She was not merely uttering words. I now realized her every word and novel turn of phrase was actually a visualization. She was visualizing images of the celebration, and with her typical stubbornness, she will go on visualizing and dreaming about it until the dream turns into reality. Like a die-hard fanatic, she will dream. She will give her all to those Dachniks, just as she has done for the past 20 years. And I cried out to stop her. "What's going on? Don't you understand all that stuff about a holiday? It's all just in fun. I was only teasing." Anastasia suddenly stopped in her tracks. No sooner did I catch a glimpse of her than I felt a big lump in my throat from the look on her face. Her face looked bewildered like that of a child, and she looked at me with pain and also with pity, as though I were an unremitting attacker. Almost in a whisper, she started saying, "Vladimir, I took it seriously. I have already visualized it all, and to life's chain of events, people's forthcoming telegrams have already interwoven into a link. An order of events will be broken without them. I have accepted your words, believed in them, and brought them to pass. I perceived you were speaking of the holiday in telegrams sincerely. Do not take back the words that you have spoken. Just help me with the telegrams so that I may, as you said, offer assistance with my ray." "Okay, I'll try, only don't panic. Maybe it'll end up that nobody will even want to send the telegrams." "There will be people who will comprehend, Vladimir. They will feel it in the government and in your Duma as well. And a holiday there will be. It will arise. Time will tell. Look here." And once again, celebration images passed before my eyes. "There! I've written about it. Now you can go and do as your heart and soul dictates to you." Now, here's a note. In 1998, 1 year after this book was first published in Russian, the government of St. Petersburg, Vladimir Yakovlev, instituted a Gardener's Day, giving the residents of St. Petersburg and the surrounding region an additional day off to spend on their garden plots. And since then, this example has been followed by many regional authorities. So while not yet instituted on the national level, the holiday is officially celebrated in dozens of cities and regions throughout Russia, and the date of the holiday varies from region to region. And so, now I'm on to Chapter 10. The Ringing Sword of the Bard. What do you mean, Anastasia, by such extraordinary turns of phrase in speaking about this holiday? You pronounced each word in such a tone. Every sound was crystal clear on its very own. I tried to reproduce a picture of the holiday with precision. This means to use detailed images. But what about the words? What particular significance do they have? Upon each word was born a multitude of happy pictures and events, and now they will all come true, Vladimir, for thought and word, you understand, are the principal instruments of the grand Creator, an instrument bestowed not on all that grows with flesh and bones, but just alone to man. But then why doesn't everything that people say come to pass? When the thread between the spoken word and the soul is broken, when the soul is found empty, and the image is dulled, then what is said, through it be plenty, is as empty as chaotic sound, and nothing can it be. That's sheer fantasy. Come on now, you let yourself believe in everything like a naive child. How can it be a fantasy, Vladimir? After all, I could give hundreds of examples from the world you live in, and even from your own life, as to what power a word has when it projects the image connected with it. Well, then give me an example that I can understand. An example? Well, here is one. A person is standing on the stage before an audience and speaking words. An actor, for instance. He will repeat the same words people have heard many times before. But there is only one actor people will listen to with bated breath. Another they will not adore. The words are the same, but there is a vast difference in how they are declaimed. What do you think? Why does this happen? Well, that's actors for you. They spend years studying at drama school, and some are outstanding in their profession, and others are just, well, so-so. They memorize their lines at rehearsals so that they can say them with expression. They are taught at drama school, Vladimir, how to get inside the image that underlies the word. Then they try to reproduce that image during rehearsals. And if an actor succeeds in projecting even 10% of the invisible images underlying the words that he is speaking, the audience will then listen with their whole attention. And if he should succeed in projecting the images behind half of his words, you will indeed call that actor a genius. For his soul is speaking directly with the souls of those sitting or standing in the auditorium. And during the play, people will laugh or cry as they feel in their soul what the actor desires to convey. Such is the instrument of the grand Creator. And you, whenever you speak, with how many words can you project the corresponding images? Like 10% or 15 or 50. With all of them. That is why great-grandfather taught me. All of them, really? Every word? Great-grandfather said it is even possible to project the images contained in the letters of the alphabet. And I learned how to come up with an image for each letter. Why letters? Letters don't mean anything. Letters do mean something, Vladimir. Behind every letter, in Sanskrit, for example, there are words, even whole phrases. There are letters there, too, and beyond them many written words, so that infinity is hidden in every letter. And with that, it's top of the hour, and I'm going to take a break and get some water, And I hope you're enjoying this, and stick with me. I'll be right back to continue The Ringing Sword of the Bard. And welcome back, and thank you for sticking with me through this wonderful read. I'm finding it very intriguing, and these teachings and the insights on, the power of word, for sure. I do kind of tend toward that myself. So let's continue here. So I'm just going to go back to this one sentence where I left off. So, now, there are letters there too, and beyond them many written words, so that infinity is hidden in every letter. Well, isn't that something? And we just splutter out our words. Yes, that is what happens to words that have been passed down to us over thousands of years. They have passed through and penetrated time and space. And the forgotten images underlying them still today are once more attempting to knock on the door of the human race. And they watch out for our souls and even go to war on their behalf. And what kind of words are these? Is there at least one that might be familiar to me? Of course there is. At least as a sound you have heard. But people have forgotten what underlies these words. And Anastasia lowered her eyelids. Sorry about that interference. Anastasia lowered her eyelids and sat silent for a while, and then very quietly, almost in a whisper, she asked me, "Vladimir, please pronounce the word bard." "Bard," I said. She shuddered almost as though in pain and said, "Oh, the indifference and banality in your pronunciation of that majestic word. You blew a cold gust of emptiness and neglect upon the candle's restless, flickering flame, a flame that has been connected through the centuries and possibly even addressed to you or someone else living today by a distant forebearer. Forgetfulness of our derivation is the cause of our modern devastation." And just what didn't you like about my pronunciation? What should I be remembering in connection with that word? Anastasia fell silent. And then, in a quiet voice, she began uttering phrases straight out of antiquity. "Long before Christ's birth, there lived certain people on the earth, our forefathers who were called Celts. Their wise teachers were known as Druids, and many people inhabiting the earth at that time knelt before the Druids' knowledge of the material and spiritual worlds. Not a single Celtic warrior would dare unsheath his sword in the presence of a Druid. To be awarded the title of Druid even at the starting level, they had to undergo at least 20 years of arduous training at the hands of a spiritual teacher, a Druid priest. And those who were consecrated in this domain were known as bards. They alone had the moral authority to go out among the people and sing about and inculcate the light and the truth contained in the song, using words to project images and heal people's hearts. The Celts fell subject to the attacks by Roman legions, and their last battle took place at a river. The Romans noticed that there were women walking among the Celtic warriors, women with long flowing hair. Experienced Roman commanders, though knowing what this meant, that they would have to outnumber the Celts 6-1 in order to defeat them, were unaware of the reason why. Nor do modern historians and researchers have a complete explanation. It all had to do with those unarmed women with their long, flowing hair. The Romans surged in with a mighty force, outnumbering the Celts 9-1. Aligned with their backs up against the river, the last family of fighting Celts was on the verge of defeat. They stood strong in a semicircle, and behind them was a young woman breastfeeding a wee baby girl and singing. The young mother sang a bright and cheerful song so as not to instill doleful fear in the little one's soul, so that she would be left with an image of the light. Whenever the little one tore herself away from her mother's breast, their eyes would meet, and the woman would cease her singing and each time tenderly utter her baby's name, Barda. Soon there was no longer any semicircle to defend the pair. All that stood between the nursing mother and the flood of Roman legionnaires making their way along the narrow path was a young and blood-gored bard, armed only with a sword. He turned to look at the woman, and their eyes met, and they smiled at each other. The wounded bard managed to stave off the Romans while the woman went down to the river. She put her wee baby girl into a little boat and pushed it away from the river. With one last great effort of willpower, the bleeding bard threw down his weapon at the woman's feet. She took up his sword and fought for 4 hours straight, with the legionnaires on the narrow path, preventing them from reaching the shore. Their strength became spent, and they spelled each other off on the narrow path. The Roman commanders looked on in silent astonishment, but could not understand how strong and experienced soldiers could not come close enough to even scratch this woman's body. For 4 bruising hours she fought the flood of Roman attackers, and then the woman's lungs gave out, dried up with dehydration, as no liquid had touched her tongue, and drips of blood began oozing from her cracked, beautiful lips. Slowly sinking to her knees, her strength waning all the while, she still managed one more faint smile in the direction of the little boat carrying away her wee Barda, a future songstress, slowly moving downstream with the current. And one more gleam of the word and its image, which have been carried down through the millennia for the benefit of many living upon the earth today. Man's being is not only in the flesh. Man's invisible feelings and aspirations and sensations are immeasurably sharper and greater than what can be discerned by the eye or ear. As in a mirror, they are but partially reflected in the visible material state. And the baby Barda grew into girlhood and later became a woman and a mother. She lived on the earth and she sang. Her songs imparted to people only bright feelings and, like the all-healing ray, helped them chase away the gloominess of the heart. Many of life's afflictions or deprivations tried to extinguish the sources of this ray. The hidden force of darkness tried to break through it, but could not overcome the one obstacle in their way. The bard and his wife, who stood looming before them on the narrow path. Man's essence is not in the flesh, Vladimir. The bard's bleeding body projected into eternity the smile of his soul's blessed light, reflecting the unseen essence of man. And the lungs of the young mother holding the sword gave out after a while. Blood dripped and then poured from the cracks of her lips, which had caught the bard's bright smile. And now, Vladimir, believe in me. Understand and see, and you will hear the ring of the invisible sword of the bard, beating back the attack of the dark and the angry forces on the path to the hearts of his descendants today. Now please, please, pronounce the word bard once again, Vladimir. I can't, not until I can say it with the proper meaning. Then I shall most certainly pronounce it. Well, thank you for not attempting it, Vladimir. Tell me, Anastasia, after all you are able to tell, who among those living today are the direct descendants of that nursing mother and that little girl, the songstress Barda, of the bard warrior who stood on the narrow path? Who can forget something as important as his ancestry? Tell me, Vladimir, why this question came to your thoughts. I want to get a good look at that person or persons who have forgot such things, those who do not remember where they came from, those without feeling for the same. Perhaps you want to make us certain that you are not the one who is forgetting. Now, what does that... Never mind, Anastasia. I've got it. You needn't give it another thought. Let each person figure it out for themselves. Fine, she replied and fell silent, looking at me. And I too kept silent for a time, reflecting on the pictures Anastasia had painted. And then I asked her, why did you choose that particular word as an example? To show you how the images underlying it in the real world will soon take visible form. Guitar strings in swarms are now vibrating under the fingers of today's Russian bards. Even back when I was dreaming about it all in the taiga, these bards were the first to feel those images, and their hearts, and their souls. Well, at first it was only in one of them that flared, a flickering, burning flame, and the delicate resonance of a guitar string. But then the souls of others caught the rhythm, and they joined in. Soon their songs will be heard by many both near and far. These are the bards who will help us behold the new dawn, the dawn of enlightenment of human hearts and souls. You shall hear their songs, and these will be new songs, songs of the awakening dawn. And this is chapter A Sharp About Turn. After returning to the ship after my 3-day stay with Anastasia, it was some time before I was in a frame of mind to take charge of company business. At first I was unable either to decide on the ship's next destination or even answer the many radiograms coming in from Novosibirsk. And the hired workers and even some of my crew apparently sensed my inattention to the daily routine, and they began stealing from me. They were arrested by the police from the Surgut town where the ship was docked, working with my bodyguards, and detention papers were drawn up. But even this was not something I felt like delving into. It's hard to say at the moment just why my talks with Anastasia had such a strong effect on me. Before this, my firm had received many visits with representatives of all sorts of religious denominations. They claimed they wanted to do something good for society and always asked for money. Sometimes I would oblige just so they would go away, without looking too deeply into the cause that they were collecting for. And what was the point of asking them more questions if the conversation always ended up with a request for money? In contrast to all the so-called religious people, Anastasia never asked for money. In any case, I couldn't even imagine what I could give her. Outwardly, it seemed she had nothing, and yet I gradually got the impression that she had everything. I gave orders for the ship to proceed full speed to Novosibirsk and hold myself away in my cabin just to think. My more than 10 years' experience in business and team management had taught me a lot. The highs and lows I had gone through had given me the skills that I needed to seek and to find a way out of all sorts of tricky situations. This time, however, I felt I was at rock bottom. All the troubles imaginable came upon me. The failure of the firm appeared imminent, and one of the so-called well-wishers had already started a rumor that was now increasing in currency that something had happened to me and that I was no longer capable of making sound business decisions. So people concluded it was every man for himself, and that's exactly what happened. So upon my return, I saw how people were saving themselves. Even my relatives had their hand in it, pilfering what they could from the company. It's all going to go broke anyway, they figured. There was just one small group of my longtime employees who had tried to withstand this onslaught. But after the arrival of the lead ship, upon seeing what kind of literature I had my nose into, even they became worried about my mental state. I myself had a perfectly clear and sober perspective on what was happening. I was fully aware that I was no longer in any position to manage this team effectively. Even those I had earlier trusted as my tried and true supporters were now starting to cast doubt upon any decision that I made. Even though I very much wanted to tell everyone who would listen about Anastasia, it hardly seemed possible to count on anybody's understanding. It might even land me in the loony bin. My family were already starting to talk about what kind of treatment I might need. Without saying so in so many words, those around me were demanding that I get back down to earth and come up with a business plan, and a successful one at that. They dismissed my latest distraction as either madness or a nervous breakdown. I had really begun thinking about all sorts of things in this life of ours. What's going on here? I thought. You hustle through one commercial operation and even earn big money, but where's the satisfaction? Because you immediately want more. And it's been going on like that for over 10 years. Where's the guarantee that this race won't last my whole life without so much as a whiff of satisfaction? One person gets upset because he doesn't have enough money for a bottle of vodka. A billionaire gets upset because he doesn't have enough for some major acquisition or another. Maybe it's not the amount of money that counts. One morning, two old acquaintances of mine, both entrepreneurs in charge of big commercial firms, came to see me at my office. I started talking with them about setting up a commonwealth of pure-minded entrepreneurs about the purpose and goals of our business. After all, I just had to share all this with somebody. They played along, nodding now and then in agreement. It was a long conversation, and I ended up thinking to myself, can it be that they actually grasped this? They did spend a lot of time discussing it after all, but later my driver told me, you know, Vladimir Nikolaevich, they were asked to come and see you by people concerned about you, about your health. They wanted to know what you've been preoccupied with all this time, what's been on your mind. In short, to make sure you haven't lost your mind. They wanted to know whether they should call in a psychiatrist or simply wait and let it pass. And what do you think of my mental state? He fell silent for a while and then said quietly, for 10 years your work's gone along just great. Many in the city have said you're a successful businessman. But now all of your employees are afraid they may be left without a paycheck. It was only then I realized the extent of people's concern, and I said to the driver, Turned the car around. I went back to the office. I called an emergency staff meeting. I appointed supervisors for the company's various activities, and I gave them full authority to act in my absence. I then told the driver to pick me up early the next morning and take me to the airport. Just as I was about to go through the boarding gate, he handed me something wrapped in a towel, and it was warm. I asked, "What is it?" "Piroshki." "So you're giving me these out of compassion for a crazy person?" "They're from my wife. She couldn't sleep, and she baked all night. She's never baked anything before. She's still a pretty young woman, but last night she plunged right in. She insisted I give them to you. She wrapped them in a towel. They're still warm. She says you won't be back for a while, if you come back at all. So this is goodbye." "All right, then. Thank you very much." He resigned from the firm a few days later. Okay. Now, I'm at chapter 12, Who Sets the Course? But I think I'm going to end a little bit early, so it's almost 7:30. I think I'm going to end a little early. I've been reading for almost 2 hours, and maybe I'm just a little tired today. I don't know. I got this frog in my throat. I hope it hasn't interrupted much of my reading here. But I just want to thank you all for sitting with me here and listening to this, The Ringing Cedars of Russia, and all about Anastasia and this man's journey and how it's changing his life and the insights and wisdom that he's gaining. And we'll see where this goes. You know, there are 8 books to Anastasia, and I'm only on the 2nd book. I wonder how much more mysterious stuff is going to unfold in all of these books. So now I'm really like sunk in here, and I really now want to know, yes, what is going to be more insightful or, fantastical or mysterious? What's going to happen to this guy? And yes, what's going to happen to Anastasia? So I will be back here next Wednesday, same time. And I want to thank all you people out there for listening, and I want to thank Shaziz and Haggy Shack, Colleen on Haggy Shack Radio, all the listeners over there, and my sister Patty Walking Turtle for getting me on here, and everyone for supporting me. And have a beautiful week, and I will see you next week. Doksha Kalamaya.